Hi, my name is Gary McCullum, Senior Vice President and General Manager for Cox Communications. Recently, several high-profile cases involving high school students, gang violence, and police action have opened the eyes of many of us in this area. The program you are about to see takes a close look at the impact of gang activity from a teen's perspective and what we can do together to combat it. The more awareness that is built around this issue, the more we as a community can prevent another teenager from falling victim to gang violence and becoming just another statistic. This program is meant to inform and offer resources to viewers young and old alike so that we can navigate through tough issues to achieve a positive result. On behalf of Cox Communications, we present this special program, Plugged In.
For high school senior Lonnie Andrews, 2008 couldn't have been a better year. He had just accepted a full ride to play football at Virginia State University, and he was to be the first member of his family to ever attend college. Needless to say, Lonnie was excited about his future. One night, just 3 weeks after graduation, Lonnie, his little sister, and some friends went to a dance at Janelle's Center for the Youth. At the end of the evening, Lonnie and fellow Oscar Smith student Marvin Knight got into an argument, leaving Knight with a swollen face, injured hand, and a bruised ego. What began as a celebration to the start of summer then took a deadly turn. In retaliation, Knight took out a gun from his pocket and pulled the trigger, putting an end to a life that showed such promise. Marvin Knight is now behind bars, serving a 28-year sentence for the murder of Lonnie Andrews. He will be 46 years old when he's finally released. So how did a disagreement between two young men escalate into a violent and senseless act destroying both their lives? Allegedly, Knight was a member of the Warview gang in Norfolk. There were pictures on his MySpace page of him throwing gang signs and the word Warview in red letters. During Knight's trial, witnesses testified that they were fighting about how Knight was stealing and spray painting gang signs in Lonnie's neighborhood. Stories like this are happening all the time and right in our own backyard. Where there are gangs, there's violence, which makes them a serious threat to the safety of our community. And yet, the number of gangs and its victims continue to grow. So how do we take control of this situation and combat this epidemic that's jeopardizing the future of so many of our young people? Stay with us. It's time to get plugged in. Welcome to Plugged In, a series that gives a voice to the youth of Hampton Roads. I'm your host, Nick Taylor, and for the next hour, we'll tackle the issue of gangs in Hampton Roads, the truths and misconceptions behind gang life, the reasons why young people decide to join gangs, and what teenagers can do to not only keep themselves out of harm's way, but how they can make the right decisions when it comes to their future. And our audience today are students from the Access College Foundation and the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, two organizations that support and help young people to realize their fullest potential. Also joining us are local law enforcement, decision makers, and civic leaders who are on the front lines of the battle against gangs. Together, we hope to create an open dialogue among the entire community in order to better understand the nature of gangs and, in turn, find the solutions to an increasingly complicated issue. Welcome, everyone. For nearly 10 years, Edna Smith and her husband traveled all over the world, having built their careers in the United States military. The couple and their two children lived in Germany, Panama, and Japan before ending up here in Hampton Roads. Naturally, Edna had some concerns about everyone being able to adjust to life in the States, but they were a tight-knit family, and she was confident that they'd be able to work through any problems together. But what Edna wasn't prepared for were the new realities that teenagers face today, and that those problems were going to be much harder to overcome. Edna, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Let's start off by talking about concerns you had moving here to the States for your kids. Starting in a new school is a problem. Starting in a new school/country, is an even bigger deal. How did they seem to be adjusting?
My son, he played football, did very well with that. My daughter, she adjusted to elementary school, and things were going fine as we thought. Gangs was last on my list.
I believe it. And what originally kind of signs made you realize that John might be in some kind of trouble?
I think the initial sign was there was a tagging incident, and that tagging incident led to other things, and that was the beginning of all our troubles.
My mother, when I was young, used to panic if I came home after the streetlights came on. So I can only imagine the panic level that you as a mother felt when you first heard that your son was associated with gang activities. Take us back to that moment, and I guess tell these kids and the kids that are watching at home, what does a mother go through? What are the feelings you go through when you first hear something like that?
Well, I think initially I felt like I was watching a movie, and it was just an unreal moment. Did I not accept, what was going on? Yes, I did. But I couldn't believe it. I was being introduced to a world that I only saw on TV. Never thought that I would have to, as a parent, have to go through learning a whole lot about the gang life and the signs to look for. There was signs that was there, but I think my biggest mistake was that my son, he's like me, he would never do that. I'm a leader.
Yeah.
He would never, do anything like that. He's stronger than that.
Yeah.
So
you talk about it with your son, you communicate as much as you can, and did things at some point start to seem more normal? Did they start to get more normal? Did you feel, maybe even naively, that you were in control of this situation?
I was always on guard with some of the things that came about. I knew it was real, and I knew that if things didn't change, that we would possibly be going to visit him in a morgue.
Yeah.
And it just so happened, that he started college. Wasn't any, grades were great. There was no signs. So, I mean, it was a hidden story, or a hidden story that was being told, but it was right in front of my face.
And now you mentioned the signs of gang activities, and graffiti and tagging are two of the biggest ones. But there is a worst case scenario. With your son, when did you come to the realization that this is more than just graffiti and tagging that he's involved in?
I think when the detectives came to our house and questioned him, and that's when we found out everything.
You mentioned
that was
it's
going
like watching a movie, being a part of a TV show. So these detectives show up at your house, and you're thinking, wait a minute, this is a bigger problem than we originally thought. Right. What does it do to you emotionally as a mother? And I guess for these kids who are maybe thinking of getting involved in this, I think we need to let them know what it does to a parent.
It's horrible. And the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because I'm seeking answers from the kids to find out, why are we losing so many, of our teenagers? What is it, that you can have kids that come from a two-parent home, or you can have the extreme of what we see in the, in the news all the time, but that's not the typical scenario. This thing is like a cancer, and it is spreading across all boundaries. Nobody is eliminated from this.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do? You have to take your story, or that's what I'm doing, taking my story, and I'm sharing as much as I can. Even with the young kids, I talk to them, because I think what we need to do is we need to listen to the kids more, because they can tell us what it is that they need.
Yeah.
And maybe, perhaps, as adults, we need to listen a little more.
Before we wrap up this segment, let's put an exclamation point here by telling everyone who's watching the consequences that your son faced from being involved in gang activities.
Well, it's hard, because right now he's a felon. Can't get a job. It's horrible. I mean, he's trying to put the pieces of his life back together, but as soon as that background check is done and they see that you're a felon, it goes in the trash.
Communication is a big part from parents and to kids. We're going to let these kids here communicate with you in the next segment. Still to come, Edna tells us what she learned from her son's ordeal and what she and her family are doing to move forward. We'll be back with more Plugged In right after this break.